Good morning, everyone. Good morning, CSL Palm Desert and beyond. Well, greetings from my office at the center. I'm actually at the center right here. As you can tell, it's a different set. I normally don't have that behind me. So welcome. I'm glad to be back into our little spiritual home here temporarily. This is great. So good morning, Dale Olansky.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Joe.
So everyone, let me introduce Dale. Dale has been at our center. How many years have you been with us?
Originally I came in 2001, so 19 years, but
Wow.
I didn't really start stepping up until 2003, 4. I started taking classes and the whole
Right.
practitioner thing.
Yeah. So she's been here for a while. You've
Yes.
seen a lot of transformation.
Lots. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. 2001. That would have been
Dr. Tom.
Yeah, Dr. Tom, and the end of his ministry was kind of winding down.
Yep.
So yeah. Oh yeah. So no, it's a 180. So
Totally.
it's 180 degrees.
Totally.
So Dale has written a book. Dale, tell them the title of your book and show them the book.
Yeah, this is my book. It's called Fear to Faith, a daily guide to finding solace in an uncertain world. And it published last year. Yeah, wow. I published it in April of 2019. And it's actually based on a Facebook page that I started in 2017 after the election, because I know there were polar reactions to the election. Some people were really happy, but some people got really scared. And so I found it my work to do to help those, to comfort those who were really scared. And so I started off with just a basic Facebook page where I would post kind of generic inspirational messages. But then one day I thought, I had an experience in my life and I thought, well, I'm going to talk about this experience, how I did a pivot and how I came to a spiritual understanding of this experience. So I wrote about that and my page was flooded with likes and I so relate with that. People loved it. So I changed the way that I was writing this page. And so I was able to walk through what everybody else was walking through, getting from fear to faith. And so after about a year and a half of this, people were saying, you've got to put this stuff in a book, because they were nice little nuggets. And after my mom passed away in April of 2018, I reached out to Ginny Weissman, who's been in publishing forever. And she had been one of the people encouraging me to publish this book. And I went to her and I said, I'm ready to publish. You want to walk me through this? And so she held my hand. She helped me work with a publisher. And last year it became an actual concrete book. And I've just been loving circulating this to people. And since this COVID thing came up, I'm getting all kinds of responses from people that are saying that this book, especially now, is providing them with such comfort. And when I read through some of the entries, it's like what happened years ago is still such an experience for us. So this is like, it's timeless wisdom through these things that happen in life that cause us to get really shaken up. And so my book is really about calming down, seeing the good that's coming up, and just getting to a place of peace of mind through all this stuff that's happening in our world that's making us feel very unsettled. And it's really something to really ground us in our divinity and in the presence of God to be able to be more calm through all of this.
Well, and I to that point, I think that now more than ever, I'm being able to look back and recognize that there's this ebb and flow that's consistently happening in the universe and in our own lives and in the lives of our United States and of our communities and all of those things. And, when something's happening, I remember, after 9/11, there was a huge impact, right? And people were just like, oh my God, nothing's happened like that before. And then there was like a huge financial crisis, and then followed by, this whole, I call it COVID. The whole, what is it? Corona.
Corona, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. I don't remember. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. But
yeah.
All these things. What's interesting though is the magnitude at which things increase. I've been one to say, look, the universe continues to give us messages along the way, and they start out real subtle, or as subtle as can be, and then they get greater and greater in magnitude until it really makes you pay attention. And so I think part of what's happening here is we have been in the process of something happening, and now we really have to pay attention. We have to pay attention to it because it's building. So tell me about some of the chapters of the book.
Well,
tell me about some of the chapters that you haven't.
Well, what this is, it's a daily read. So if you guys can see this, Every day there's 365 entries.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and there's little journaling places for you if because we didn't know what to do. The designers, we didn't know what to do because some are longer than others, and they said, well, let's give a place for people to journal if they like. So it's a really fun book. So I was gonna when I read these, it's so funny that what was coming up to be addressed at the time that I wrote this. It's amazing how the same things just keep appearing in different forms. So this is actually number 365, and it's so relevant,
The last
right? It says, whenever I see turmoil in the world, I know I have to be mindful about not allowing this outer conflict to become inner conflict for me. This morning, when I tuned everything out and connected to spirit, I felt deep peace, and the affirmation, all is well in the sanctuary of my soul, came to mind. Tending to the peace within during this chapter of our history can be challenging, but it is totally doable. We must take the time to go within, connect to spirit, and fill ourselves up with peace and love so we can walk through this with strength and ease. And I have an affirmative statement at the end of every one of these. And this
right.
affirmative statement is, deep within me is an impenetrable peace that nourishes my soul and gives me the ability to be calm and resilient no matter what is taking place outside of me. And this is really what we're doing. We're managing the outer world as it's coming into us, and we're reacting to it. And you talk to this all the time. The only control we have is our mind and our reactions and our consciousness. So this is where our work is, to be able to walk through this and have peace and not get freaked out, and just to know that everything always works out perfectly. We've seen it in our own lives, and we've seen it in our collective history as well. Things always balance out. And when we're keeping that high watch, we're bringing in that ability and that consciousness for that to demonstrate.
So when you were writing this book, when you were writing the book, did it take you a year to write the book, or did you sit down and just kind of do a daily plan and write 3 or 4 days at one time?
No, it actually just I can't even believe I did this. Every morning I would sit down at my computer, because it was these are Facebook posts.
Right.
Every morning I would do this. And so after a year and a half, I had like 400 posts. And so I just took all of the posts and took the ones that were most relevant, and those became the book. So it wasn't something that I wrote with the intention of writing a book. It was just, I'm just going to post every day. And after having a collection, it made its own book. So the book wrote itself in a year and a half.
Yeah.
Which
That
was
was one of the
really great.
questions people were asking. How was
Oh,
it for a year to write an inspiration and then
I
annotate
tell you,
that?
yeah, this was such a God kind of expression for me, because I just, I'm not now. I will never wake up at 6 a.m. to write like this. I don't know if I could, but I was so compelled to just do it and get the word out to people, and it was cathartic for me as well, because I was processing my life and doing the pivot. So it was such a joy to do. But I absolutely loved it. And it was magic, and yeah, it's work to write, because I did so much editing each time, but it felt so good to be self-expressed like that. So it was actually a very joyful God kind of thing to do. So kind of how that
Well, and
evolved.
it was your spiritual practice, right?
It was exactly, yes, exactly it was.
It became the dominant spiritual practice for a while.
It did. It really did. And Julie, I see Julie, you can get my book at Amazon, everybody. Just put my name and the name of the book and it'll pop up. You can just get it through there.
Fear to Faith.
Fear to Faith, Fear to Faith, a daily guide to finding solace in an uncertain world. What is somebody else asking? Oh, okay.
I got him cleared. Good morning from the East
Got
Coast.
him. Okay, great.
Someone said this book has been wonderful. I'm not sure who this is, but it says this book has been wonderful for me. Totally recommend it. So you're getting high reviews right there in our comment section already. We've only been online 9 minutes and people are saying, gotta have it. Where do I get it? I love it. Pick a couple more in there, Dale, because what you just said was really profound in terms of interesting that you wrote that in 2018. And again, it's timeless because it's timeless and constant. I wonder about that. Maybe we have to talk about that. Why is it that there is this this ebb and flow? Why do we experience that ebb and flow of that? We need that constant reminder because seems to be a constant crisis. I know I've talked about on Sundays in the pulpit. It's like it seems like we've been going through just as long as I can remember, and not just the past couple of years, but the past um, ever since the 2006, it seems like there was always something happening on a large scale that needed to be addressed, and a week we couldn't go a week without some sort of a headline taking over.
Yeah.
And I remember walking to the sanctuary every Sunday thinking, okay, how am I going to walk people through this particular situation? And week after week after week after week, and I kept thinking it would be really nice if we didn't have a week, we could have a week off, but it just seems like it never happened. So I wondered about how this spiritually is happening for us in that realm. Does that make sense? Why,
Yeah.
why do you
Well,
why do you think that is? As a ministerial student
oh,
who
yeah.
just finished her written exams, how do you feel that? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think first of all, because we are one world now, that I think that we're all involved in each other's business, and it's nothing's really localized anymore. So we're part of the whole world of eruptions and crises. We're all in it together. And since that's since it's so en masse, there's so much of it. If we were more localized, we probably wouldn't have so much trauma that we're a part of or that we're witnessing. But honestly, I just think it's the human condition. We love to be safe and secure and everything's okay, but there's always something cracking open for us that pulls us off of our norm, off out of our comfy zone, and pulls us into something new territory. And sometimes it's frightening, but we're well equipped to walk through all of this because we're all spiritual expressions of God. So we have that allness and that wisdom of life and that coping mechanism to be able to calm down, to know that the truth about the universe and how everything does unfold perfectly, and to kind of recalibrate ourselves to just calm into this and go with the flow of whatever newness is coming up for us. So honestly, I think it's where we're just at with this being such a global society now, that we're just all in it together, seeing everybody's issues and being affected by everybody, all of it. So and we're getting used to it. I think we're adjusting, we're adapting to it. And spiritual
Yeah.
practice, and spiritual wisdom helps us through that, because it reminds us, and I think you've said this in many of your talks, none of this is new. This is how life has always been for mankind. There's always been something. There just seems to be a lot more of it now. Maybe it's because we're so big and we're all kind of, we're going through a global evolution spiritually as well. We're all coming into a spiritual, not religious place. Our religions, they can't divide us anymore. We have to be into that oneness and see that oneness if we're going to, thrive and have more of a cooperative world and a loving world.
So there's a couple comments. Was Dale going through something she could share with us at the time she was doing the daily posts?
I was going through what everybody else was going through. I had my own stuff. Yes. During the writing of this book, some people know my mom had a really catastrophic stroke in 2004, which actually is what brought me to start taking classes at the center. And in 2006, my dad passed away. And so my sister and I became the caretakers of my mom. And towards the last couple of years of this book, her health started really deteriorating. And she passed away during the end part of the writing of this book. And I don't have so much of that in the book. Some of the stuff it just wasn't part of the whole scheme of things for the complete content. But there were, I do have some stuff that I posted on my Facebook page that talked about what we were experiencing with caregivers and just there was so much chaos around her passing for 3 months. So that was part of the end game of this book. And, I was so grateful to have this teaching, because if I didn't have it, I would never have the presence of mind to be able to walk through that with my sister and my mom with such calm and peace. Because with somebody going through major health crises, spirituality is such a great grounding tool, and that's something I really lean into. And there's some entries in here that talk about that, but that was one of the big things to answer that question.
So a lot of your response was what's happening in the world, not necessarily happening in your own personal life.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I was reacting in my own way. And that's why it was so cathartic to me, because whatever was triggering me, I could process it in a way with everybody else. And here I was to give the spiritual uplift in it. And I felt like that was my duty in writing this book, is to say, yeah, this feels icky and it's scary, but but here's the truth. And so it allowed me to turn it for everybody because I had the skills to do so.
Have you thought about putting this into like a workbook, another workbook form or a workshop form?
Yeah, I'm definitely, now that ministerial is coming to a completion, yeah, I'm definitely thinking about putting this into a workbook and creating a class around it. Definitely. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Another one. Another question. Do you think it's harder today to maintain a conscious connection with spirit than before the virus?
Absolutely not. Actually, to be quite honest, my spirituality has deepened in this virus thing. I've had such amazing elevation of consciousness. However, when it first came on, I was very clear that there were things that were very upsetting to me. It was hard for me to look at the massive death counts and just what people were going through, and the fear. And so I did my work at the front end. I knew this is I've got to get this right in my mind. And then once I did, I've had such an elevation of consciousness that I'm really, to be quite honest, I'm unflinching in what I'm seeing take place, because I'm really solid that this is a spiritual evolution, and I have absolutely no fear whatsoever right now about it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, that whole conscious connection during this. I think part of being conscious and having that conscious connection is taking this time to prioritize and see what has surfaced as a priority item in your life,
Yeah.
because some of us get so busy doing that we forget to like live our lives. We just go from one thing to the other. I mean, our calendar drives our life versus us driving the calendar.
Yep.
And so it's been interesting to see, when you remove everything, when you strip everything off your day planner and off your calendar, it's interesting to see what's left. And you're left there with your thoughts, and you're left there with going, okay, now what is a priority of mine? And I think that connection to that reconnection to what is very important to us has been a really interesting journey during this time.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I know for myself, the priorities that I had prior to this, um, they're not as heated, and they're not as important, if you will, as some of the things that have surfaced in the middle of this journey. And I would say the middle, because while people still think that, I mean, we're coming out of things, we're still in the middle. We're
Oh
still in
yeah.
the middle. We still have There's so many question marks that are still there, and may remain there for a while. We may be living in the question mark for quite some time.
Oh, I agree.
So I think that the whole premise for me, and at this point, is the conscious connection has really, um, it's been a re-examining of what is my priority, and as is my intention and my attention, are they focused on the things that ultimately are going to move me through my experience to the
Exactly.
highest and best. All
Yes.
right, a couple questions. Being that
Okay.
said, we are all connected on a daily basis to the internet, and has contributed to how, whoa, that moved, has contributed. um, Now I lost it. Now, see, this is where age is going to show its ugly head. How the internet has contributed to how we receive our news very quickly. Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we feel inundated is because of this um, real time, and it overstimulation, over information, and too much information. It's overwhelmed. It's constant. I think part of the issue that creates this angst is that there's not just for this virus thing, but for everything. There's just this. We're inundated with it. There's nowhere to turn, because even if you put on social media, I've been watching. I've totally changed. I've now got a. I'm spending a lot less time on Facebook, and even a lot less time on Instagram, because I'm getting so tired of all the controversy on everybody. Everybody's so entrenched in their positions
Oh,
that I just want to show me some puppy doing some weird trick. Show me a little baby that just doing something, dancing or doing something funky. It's like, I had to that I can't fixate on that stuff anymore, right?
yeah.
And
That's it. And
part of your book allows people to do that. It gives you, it kind of, when in doubt. I think Barbara mentioned earlier in the stream here that she uses it as her pick a page. And for those of you who don't know what pick a page is,
yeah.
a lot of times at our center, I won't even prepare a Sunday service. I'll tell people to pick a page number in one of our textbooks, and then we pick a paragraph, and then we pick a sentence, and I do a talk right from there. And it's a
Yeah.
way that to remind ourselves that on every single page of every single book, there is a nugget in there for you to walk away with that you can change your experience. And Dale has put together a whole year's worth of those things. So you
Yeah.
have 365 pages full of nuggets that within the context of one paragraph, there's going to be some, or one page, there's going to be something you can walk away with.
Yeah, and I know there's questions, but what this entry totally piggybacks well on what you just said. I mean, it's actually the first one. It says, we live in a world where we view an excessive number of images on a daily basis, and those images get lodged in our subconscious, influencing our experience of life. Unfortunately, many of those images do not reflect the truth of who we are. When we take a step back and become the observer of those images, we create distance between what we are seeing and who we really are. This allows us to free ourselves from being manipulated by the false messages we receive from the outside world. Something that helps me create this distance is to see the images as if I were looking through a kaleidoscope. Once I put the kaleidoscope down, the images are no longer part of my reality. So it's this, it's to stop feeding ourselves that constant diet of fear and dire circumstances and the end is coming, to stop feeding that. Just, I love how you tell us to treat, you're like 10 minutes in the morning, 10 in the evening, done. So we're not just, it's poison. And it's not the truth of who we are. And it isn't the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality to me is God is moving and unfolding through all of us, and that there is a higher good being revealed. And we've got to watch what we're brainwashing ourselves with.
Yeah. I think at the onset of this, there was, I remember when it first started to surface, and the Sunday that I talked about this, as it was just beginning to come into the limelight, it was just beginning to come into focus. And I remember saying, look, people, let's not panic. Let's just, let's do what we're being recommended to do, which right now is wash your hands, just wash your hands and be mindful of whether or not you get sick or not. And then suddenly when things began to blow up, the images on TV were the things that people just literally clung to. And what I've noticed is, and now I have to say this in a really sensitive way, there were some things happening in some major big cities, and they were happening in a catastrophic way, and it was a 911. But here in just Palm Desert, in Palm Springs, the Coachella Valley, we had the virus, and we had the issue, but we didn't have it on the scale of panic that other people had. And the problem is, I think, like everything else, once the human psyche starts to hang on to panic, then they do want to hear every single thing that's coming from the TV. And I kept going, okay, we need to be careful that we don't become more concentrated because of our fears around this. We need to pray and sustain and hold those people up who are walking through something. But that's not happening in my world here. Mm-hmm. My job here is to keep things as steady as I can, and to pray for and hold up those areas that are being negatively impacted. Instead, that panic like a wave just came over everyone. And I know I had images of Eisenhower Hospital being, overwhelmed with people and all the chaos. Yeah. But the reality was very different. I mean, I don't know if I shared with this, a guy that lives 2 doors down works at the ER at Eisenhower, and he's a case manager, and they were sending him home because there was not enough work for him to do. They were calling him and saying, in the middle of this, while New York is doing its thing, and all these things were happening on a big scale, here at home, it wasn't happening to that level of degree, which is what I think, when people can put it in perspective, it's like, okay, let's us stay calm. Let's keep doing what we're doing, but we don't need to be in a panic mode. That you're reading in this, it all aligns perfectly. Yeah. All right, so here we go. Being that we're all connected on a daily basis to the internet has contributed to how we receive our news very quickly. Yes. Next thing, how do we manage the glow of all of this news coming at us on a continuous feed? How do we manage, probably the flow. How do we manage the flow of all of this news coming to us at a continuous speed? Well, I know that I've managed to turn it off.
That's what I was going to say. Exercise your choice and don't watch it. And I know it's addictive. I get it. But
I mean, I do what I do watch is the statistical data.
Yeah.
I get an email every morning from I think it's called Cactus Hugs or something. It's a local, um, like a local news source, and it just has pure statistics. This is what's been tested in the past 24 hours. This is what tested positive. This is what people recovered. These are the new cases. We have so many people in the hospital and so many people in the ICU. And it gives me, and as I piece that together, my prayer work starts in that capacity, because it's like, okay, now I know what the small reality is. It's not our capital T truth, but it is the truth of this moment. And
Yeah.
so we need to recognize it as the truth of this moment. So I'm looking at the statistical data, and that, to me, I'm a science guy. I feel better putting the science and the philosophy together, but not just honing in on someone's opinion. I think one of the things that we need to worry about, like this continuous feed, is, keep in mind, television shows are still looking for ratings. They want to steal you from someone else so you watch their program. So, I mean, I have seen respected journalists that I've respected in the past, and I really kind of question that, go after someone trying to get them to contradict something that the guest said just before them. And I'm like, why are you doing this? This guy is saying no, but you're pushing to get this inflammatory thing going on. And I'm going, for what? What's the purpose of this?
Yeah.
You're both speculating. Nothing's based on fact. Oh, it's going to be 10 years before we're back to normal. No, it's not. No, it's not. Stop saying that.
Right.
Stop saying that. I don't want people to believe that. I want us to have a belief that we can get back to a sense of whatever the normalcy is now, but we can move to that. So that continuous feed, don't you find that that's really, that's
Yeah,
disturbing?
yeah, and I'll give you a little bit of my background, because I mean, this whole thing, like I was saying earlier, there was the first phase and what I had to process through, and most people know I was raised Jewish, and in my family, I went to temple at a very young age, and I was really into the temple, and my grandmother and her family, well, her family, she made it to America, but all her family died in the Holocaust, and we were taught that we can never forget the Holocaust. And if we do, it's our fault. And so my parents really were strong in teaching us, you have to know what's going on in the world. And I still carry that. However, when I was in a place with this pandemic and thinking it's time for me to let go of this and to stop being so entrenched in it, there was a part of me that was feeling really guilty. And like, if I stop being entrenched in this, then something horrible is going to happen, because I have this mindset that I have to know everything that's going on in the world, or else I'm responsible if something horrible happens. But I had to really work with that, and be able to get to distance myself with the data and the news stream, and just to be good with knowing what I need to know, and praying the other time, seeing what's going on, but go into prayer to know that the highest and best good, and that people are getting what they need and everything's working out. So it was really part of my process too, to be able to have the right relationship with the news stream, and to make it a place where I feel informed, yet I'm not immersed in it and in fear all the time.
Yeah, Michael Beckwith used to always say, things like this, they're a call to prayer.
Absolutely.
They're not a call to panic. I think
Exactly.
I think we have to really discipline the mind, not to panic, but to be mindful and prayerful, and walk through knowing, okay, this is going to be okay. Someone asked, let's see, during the front end work you did, what message specifically came to you?
The front end of the work for this pandemic, the message was that everything is okay. Everything is absolutely okay. And what is breaking through here, as you know, Joe, you talk about this all the time, that there's evolution coming and happening. And even though we don't like what it looks like and how it's coming up, it's still part of the spiritual evolution of our whole world. This is just, and we call this in the collective consciousness, called this in, and this is what it looks like. But this isn't the end game. This is just the stepping stone to a better world. And that's the message that I got, was just to let go of the appearances of this, stay in prayer, know what you need to know, but just trust and know, as we've seen so many times in our history, in our own individual lives, when we thought this is it and we throw our hands up. No, this isn't it. There's good that's coming right through this, and never to forget that.
Well, and I think part of the premise of your book, or anyone that writes a book that's a 365-day book, like, Living the Science of Mind, the Principles. Anytime you have a book like that, it's to allow you, the front end spiritual preparation and foundation so that you're not freaked out by whatever happens in the course of a day.
Exactly.
That you're able to place things rightly in your mind instead of having a sense of panic. So any kind of a book like this that is a daily guide to this, that really, that I believe those are meant to not try to fix something that's broken, but to prepare you so you don't break when something breaks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's why we teach people to do constant spiritual practice. And you speak to this all the time. You don't just pray when you're desperate, you pray every day. You pray every day. You have spiritual practice every day. So you've got that spiritual muscle already built in. So when things happen, you can go right to that place where you know that everything is okay and you're spiritually grounded. That's why we do this work every day. So we're not caught off guard and we know how to move through.
Yeah. And I think and I want to couch something, and I agree with you, but I have to couch something because when we say to somebody, look, pray and know everything's okay, but it doesn't feel okay.
Right. Yeah.
You have to make sure that what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we know what we know. And when we say everything is okay, and you're going, but it's not. You're how can you say that? You're not being realistic. Are you dreaming, Joe? Where are you? Because you're not in the same world that I'm living at. And I say to people, even that are in crisis situations, I'm like, okay, look, in this moment, your lack of being okay, your sense of not being okay is being driven by your perception that you are not okay. We are talking to one another right here. There is not a gun to your head. You are not in this place where, look, you're here, be here. Now that doesn't mean aren't things happening around here, but in this moment, you're okay. The only time I felt that I didn't have that um, was actually when I was sitting in the back of an ambulance one time, having had a heart issue. And when I looked up at the driver, and I always said, I'm going to be okay, right? And for the first time, he said, we're going as fast as we can. And I'm like, that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear that I'm going to be okay. They're like, sir, so I asked him again, I said, I'm going to be okay, right? He goes, sir, we are going as fast as we can. We're going to get you there as quickly as possible. And I'm like, oh, that's not the answer I wanted to hear in the moment. So that's the only time in my life I think I ever said, it's not okay. Because as long as I can sense that things are moving in the direction of that good, and I normally 99.9% of the feeling that everything is moving in a direction in my life for that expansion. But there was the couple times in my history where I thought, that's not what I want to hear. So when we say that everything is okay, I think there is a recognition that we're not putting our head in the sand and saying the conditions don't exist. What we're saying is, within you at this moment, we want to recognize how okay you truly are, because once you can calm down enough to see that, then we can build on that premise. But if you build on the premise of being okay, we've got a nice solid foundation. If I build on your panic, then the foundation has been built in panic and it will crumble again. The key is to kind of sustain it. A practice like Dale has in her book, it gives you that daily routine, if you will, to make sure that you're on the leading edge. And I would probably say, if it's 365-day book, read it at night, read it in the morning, read it twice. Make sure that you go to sleep, in that mindset, as well as waking up in that mindset. All right. How are you managing your expectations for an uncertain future? Ooh, okay. You want to take that one first?
Sure, sure. And I will say, and you bring up a good point, Joe, because I've been studying science of mind for such a long time, and I'm almost a minister. My consciousness is pretty immersed in spiritual practice. So I do apologize for that. I'm glad you brought that up about about just saying it's okay, because I think it's important for people to honor the feelings that are coming up. If you're feeling scared, and this is what I do, if I feel scared, I see it and I go, wow, I'm scared. and I'm going to just let myself work through it. I'm going to continue my spiritual practices, but I know what I'm doing is going to get me to where I need to get. So I just kind of let myself process through. So because I don't want people, sometimes people start feeling ashamed because they're fearful, and don't. We're human, it comes up. But just to know that as you do things to introduce new, other ideas besides what you're getting in the news, your mind's going to calm down and you'll get to where you need to go to feel at peace. But my expectations for an uncertain future. So what I've kind of taught myself and learned about the future and my expectations is I just, and this is just my faith and where I've come, is I always say that, I don't know what my future looks like, but I know it's going to be good, because I know that good is always unfolding, and that's what I expect to come in, but I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what the form is, but I know it's going to be good. And so that's how I walk through the uncertainty, especially right now. I hear all of the reports about the economy and all this stuff, and I won't allow myself to start hearing the details and the downturn, because I know it's just going to take me into a hole, and that's not a good place for me, and I can't solve anything anyways. So if I keep that consciousness of knowing, yeah, this is uncertain, but I know that there's a divine energy that's unfolding by all of us, and if I keep that awareness, then I know that through this uncertainty, I'm going to see something really good coming through. I've seen it in my personal life, and collectively, I think we've seen really good things come through. So that's where I park my consciousness on that.
It's interesting when you're saying that during this time, this uncertain future, at the very onset of this, I had a group of people who were just devastated financially and because of their businesses. And I said at the very onset, I said, okay, you've got two choices here. While we're going through this, you can stay in your bed and put your head under the sheets and just, wait it out. And, that's it, pray and wait it out. Or you can actually tap in and say, okay, maybe this is changing, but I have to tap into this creative energy that will replace this panic. Excuse me. And lo and behold, I've seen several of my friends become more creative than they've ever been before. And because they've had this creativity during these uncertain times, they said, one of them actually reported out, I made more money this month than I've made in the past 2 years. And I'm like, okay, and were you the one that was trying to get under the sheets to cover your head because you were worried? It's like, come on now. The universe is asking you to show up and to be creative. So when during these uncertain times, my expectation for myself is to be as creative as possible I'll be really candid about it. Like when this was happening to the center, I mean, when this whole thing began to happen, I'm thinking, wow, I know that there are churches that don't have any money in their savings account. I know that there are churches that don't have the ability to do, without holding services, what are they going to do? And people began to scramble. And my spiritual instinct was, nope, we're going to be okay. And I said it from the get-go. In fact, Dale, I think you were on some of the board calls when we were, it's like when there was this, what are we going to do? And I'm like, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And I was very cavalier and casual about it, because I spiritually, I'm like, I'm living in that spiritual knowingness that even in these uncertain times, my creativity and to lead with that in the center and in my own personal life, and to teach people to be creative, has really benefited everything in general, because we're not just putting our heads up, waiting for the storm to pass over. We're actually dancing in the rain. A lot of us are out there dancing in the rain. So how do I manage an expectations for an uncertain future? I don't know everything, but I need to know what I need to know at this moment. I can't answer. People say, how are services going to happen on Sunday? I'm like, I can't answer that. When is it going to happen? I can't answer that. I can go into my mind and start playing the game, and I do. I'm really good at playing the mind game. But it's so interesting. I play the game, and every time I play the game, I can do this elaborate plan, and I go all the way around, and then and then it comes back to this moment like, yeah, but I still don't know. So I took all that energy and all that time thinking about it, going, yeah, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that I'll need to know what I need to know at the moment I need to know it. When we're leading, I'll know what I need to know at the moment I need to know it.
Absolutely. And I love
So
that you talk about creativity because really that's where it's at right now. And we all have that creativity inside of us. Some people say, oh, I'm not creative. Everybody's creative. The mind is creative. So it's a time to really, open up to that and see what unfolds for you and trust it. I think there's a lot of stuff. And I love that you brought that up.
there's a lot of opportunity. So
Yeah.
when you're managing your expectations for an uncertain future, I don't think you change what the future looks like, but you keep your eye and you keep your focus on what the snapshot is that you want your life to be. You don't give it a timeline because the universe has never worked on timelines, but you give it a picture and you just know that, okay, it's working its way there. We may have had like a detour now. So what? It's a detour. It's a delay. It's going to be a change in the way we do business for a while. Who knows? I mean, who knows? I keep thinking, wouldn't it be amazing? What are we going to do on that given day when someone says, "Oh, you know what? There's a vaccine for this," and we know like the panic around it. It's like, what's going to happen on that day? And I keep thinking, what would happen on that day? And it's a fantasy trip in mine. I mean, I'm playing it out in my head, but I keep thinking, what's that going to be like on that day? Because that's going to be that. Why isn't that possible? Why isn't that as possible as any other solution that everyone's talking about online?
Exactly.
Why isn't that? So
Exactly.
when it comes about planning for the future and the uncertain future, my plans are the same. My timeline has to change because I was married to a timeline that may or may not work at this point. Okay. God, I've had to adjust timelines my whole life. Dr. Tom always used to say, make sure you have a plan. Make sure that plan is made out of Swiss cheese so that it has holes in it and all kind of bends, it's flexible, because you're going to need that flexibility, bending more than we've ever had to bend before. Dale, pick another page out of your book that you want to share with us.
Okay, this one's cool. This is about winds of change. I've always enjoyed the wind, primarily because I see it as a representation of spirit and action, an invisible force making itself known without form. Most people I know do not like the wind because of its destructive nature. Oftentimes, wind creates unexpected changes, just as life naturally does. Our response to the winds of change is everything. Like the saying goes, we can either build a wall to keep it out in the hopes that we will not be affected by it, or we can harness its power and put it to good use. Let's face it, life gets windy at times, but those winds are spirit and action. And when we use that energy in positive and productive ways instead of resisting, great things happen. I think this just points to what you said about the creativity and bringing that through.
If the world brings you wind, build a
Harness
windmill.
exactly, exactly, right?
Build a windmill,
Exactly.
energize your house.
Yep,
Take the windmill and roll with it because it's there for your use. You know.
exactly, exactly.
All right, so everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's show. Any more questions coming up here? Nope.
Get your
No.
questions in. Nope.
Get your questions. Dale, I'm gonna let you close it out with one more of these things, and then we'll go into what's happening for the rest of the week.
Sure. Okay, let's see. I think I'll do 7. All right. All right. I find that my faith wavers when I look at what is going on in the world and I cannot see God. This is just a judgment on my part because the truth is that God is everywhere present at all times and expresses through all things, beings, and situations. As humans, we yearn to see evidence of God as we define it in our external world. I think the evidence is always there. We just have to open our eyes and recognize it. This is where faith comes in. If I think God is not present, I must remember that the evidence I am seeking is emerging from the invisible to the visible. I have to keep the space open for it to come through, and it always does when I have faith. Today, I'm able to clearly see the evidence of God in everything and in all situations. I see the divine in nature and within myself. I stand in faith, knowing that evidence of God's presence always comes forward in the most perfect way.
I love that. Do you know what? It just prompted me to have a thought, though. We could have this quick little discussion. When were we taught that God is not in that, in illness? When were we taught that God was not in the negative things that are happening? I guess I'm trying to think this in our book of belief, um, that you and I have, and it's based on information that we didn't necessarily have anything to do with. It was instilled, good, bad, right, wrong was instilled early on by, parents, loved ones, ministers, priests, rabbis, whatever it is. Our book of belief, we had to assign something negative, a negative condition, as being less godlike. I mean, I guess why wasn't someone teaching us that God is in all things, including those situations? I mean, I don't even remember hearing that until I was an adult, and an older adult, not even a younger adult, but it was that message that God is in the virus, God is in the tragedy, God is there just as much as God is in the triumphs and the successes. It's like somehow we disconnected. It's like, oh no, that's the devil, or that's evil, or that's Satan, and that underlying belief system spilled over to everything, because when something bad happened, it was the absence of God that caused it. And it's like, no, that really wasn't it. It was just as much God there as anywhere else, but we just defined it that way. Is that weird?
It's that Judeo-Christian thing. It's like we're being punished, and look at what some people are saying, how they're interpreting the more traditional religions. They're saying that we're being punished. This is a punishment for our sins, and that's so Judeo-Christian. Instead of it seeing like it's all just God in action, like what New Thought teaches, that everything is spirit. There is that division that if you're experiencing an illness or negativity, you must have done something wrong, and God is punishing you. I think it's got its roots in that old stuff, and thank God we're here to teach a different way of thinking and seeing life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just one of those things. When you read that, I thought, you know what? Where did we pick that up? Where did we get that? And where did we as a society, and is it maybe it's not, because I'm trying to think when I was studying Buddhism, in the Tao, they don't have so much of that.
Yeah, they don't.
They don't. In fact, I remember, a lot of people, they fear death, and death is a bad thing, but death is not a bad thing. It's, we watched a celebration around it, and I'm thinking, wow, these people in this culture have a whole different approach to that. There's a form of grieving, but it's not entrenched in the loss. The grieving is part of just a separation process. It's not, it's like, anyway, we could get into a whole show about that.
Right, that's a whole other.
That's another whole show.
We should have that.
So yeah. So thank you, Dale, for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for your service to the center. And Dale and the other 5 ministerial students, they all passed their written exams last week. Yeah. So check that off the list.
Now we have our panels in 2 weeks, and then
your panels. You're almost there. Almost there.
Yeah, almost there. Woohoo!
Okay, so let's talk about what are the Sensational Six doing tomorrow, Dale?
We're actually going to do a series about spiritual laws, and we're going to jump in tomorrow and talk about some of them and just have a nice rich discussion. And we're going to do this for a few weeks because there's a lot of spiritual laws to discuss. So that's what we're going to be doing. And we're looking forward to having whoever join us and have questions, because this is really an important big part of our spiritual teaching is understanding how these natural spiritual laws work and how we can use them in a way that creates a better life for ourselves. So we're going to jump in with that tomorrow.
So the Sensational Six are going to be, because we always say this is a spiritual law, or that's a spiritual law, or, it's a spiritual law, and people go like, where's the book of these laws? How do I get a hold of this book? And it's really kind of funny because we talk about it, but yeah, it's like, is there like a book of laws? So I'm glad to hear you guys are approaching that. Yeah. Then on Thursday, Gail Norton and I will be doing and I hope a lot of people participate in this one, how to deal with grief and this virus, this time that we've had to shelter in, because a lot of people are in the middle of experiencing some sort of a grief. They've lost a loved one or lost some part of their essence in their life. And then to add this shelter in time was even more difficult And for some people, they may have been moving through the grief process, and then when they had to shelter in, they weren't able to do the things they were able to do before. So their grief became very magnified during this process. So Gail Morton, who is one of the ministerial students, she's a practitioner at our center. She has a lot of work. She's done a lot of work in the grief area of grief and grief support. And so she's going to be our guest on Thursday. Dr. Laura and I are going to come back on Friday. Laura she's been teaching a class, but she's also taught a lot of different classes. She and I have a lot of experience together. So when you join us, it's a trip not only just down memory lane, but it's also a trip down, spiritual practices and things to do. It's a great learning hour. Let's see, I just got a notification. Just purchased on Amazon, only a few left.
Oh my.
You're almost sold out.
Yes.
That's great.
Well, you can always, if you can't get a hold of a copy, if they can contact Elizabeth, and I can always get a book to you, and we can just deal with the formalities.
Logistics of it.
Yeah, I've got a ton of books in the garage, so
They're not far away.
Yeah.
So there's that. Then on Saturday we do a meditation. Of course, we have Sunday services. So that's what the rest of the week looks like. Again, if you're part of this program and you're listening, we would love it if you would consider making a donation to our center. Just like every other organization right now, we're unable to have services live, which has really affected our ability to sustain the building as it goes forward. But gratefully, some of you have stepped up and supported us, and we are still significantly behind what we normally would be. But so we're asking people to step up so that when we step back in the center, it's what it was before you left. And this online presence that we have here, I'm not sure what that's going to morph into in the long term, but we definitely know that some of you are really enjoying this online experience, and it's become a way to reach out to you for those who cannot attend the center. So we'll strike a balance of that. We'll be definitely looking into that in the long term, and we've already begun the process. So we thank you so much for joining us. I had a great time. Dale, you're wonderful as always. I just love all the work that you do. So Dale, do us a favor, pray us out into this grand and glorious day.
Okay, so I invite everybody just to close your eyes and relax into your chair or wherever you're reclining, and just know with me that as that one power and presence that is spirit, that is everywhere present within and around all life, emerging as goodness, as beauty, as balance, as grace, as ease, as love, and more love. I'm so grateful to know that we are all that expression of the one. And as we move into the rest of our day, I'm knowing how we're able to see things just a little bit differently, that our eyes are opening to the way in which spirit is demonstrating through our individual lives and the collective, and just honoring ourselves as we take this journey together, and remembering that through all these different situations, there is the wholeness of God just coming forth for each person to experience. And so I'm grateful that there has been learning today, that everything has been realized and known that needs to be known right here and right now, so that we can open ourselves to the greater good of God that we all are. And so knowing that everything today is absolutely blessed, I'm grateful to just release my word, knowing all is done, all is well, and so it is.
So it is. Thank you again for joining us, everybody. Take care. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you there.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.